Today we're going to be talking about pressing for quilters. So before we begin, I want to talk about some of the basic things you need to consider when you are pressing. The first thing that I would like to talk about is fabric prep. How do you want to prepare your fabric before you begin to sew or press? So one of the things that you can purchase is, first things first, do you pre-wash your fabric, or do you leave it as is? And there's many schools of thought about that. If whatever way that you choose, you should keep all your fabric uniform with the way that you decide. If you're going to pre-wash your fabric, pre-wash all of it so that it's going to uniformly shrink or stay as is. If you don't decide to pre-wash, I would just leave the fabric as is. Both times before I begin to cut my fabric, I would starch it. There's many types of starch. The one that I recommend using is called Best Press. It's lightly treated, so that way it's not going to make your fabric cardboard stiff. So it comes scented, and it comes clear for those that can't stand fumes from the starch. It comes in larger gallon bottles, it comes in a smaller size, and it comes with a nozzle, which provides a very fine mist if you decide to use it. There's also a travel size bottle that you can order from us as well. Another thing is forget the little spray nozzle that comes with it. Say that you want to put it in another type of container. So we have this bottle made by Nifty's Notions, which is great. I believe salons use it for hair. It's nice in that 7% of all the liquid that is in here is removed with the pump. It's a double pump, so if you do it once, it's a fine mist. If you do it, you get a very long, prolonged mist twice. It's a great bottle to have at home, so you could get several because you could use it for your plants. Again, you could do it for hairstyling, and then you can do it also for your spray starch. Now that we've discussed starch, a good question is starching necessary? I believe it's optional. I think it all depends on your intent and what you're doing. If you've got a lot of triangles and you've got a lot of bias seams, it's going to help prevent it from stretching. It's going to keep it consistent. So seaming is important. How intricate is the quilt? Some patterns require no starch. Some patterns require that you apply starch. So it's all a matter of your personal preference. But the important thing is to have clean, uncreased cloth when you begin a quilting project. Another thing that you can consider before you begin the project or reviewing the pattern is, would I need one of these sheets? This is called an applique sheet, but it's technically like a pressing sheet. It can be used for both functions in helping you align your applique, but also it's great to lay on top of your fabric. Say you have a very delicate fabric, you're worried about the iron scorching it, or it's an heirloom piece. I always like to protect it with some sort of pressing sheet. This is I guess it's Teflon in terms of what it's made out of. This is this actual sheet, but I can store it in the round. Say you don't have room or you don't want to always put it back in the envelope, roll it up and stick it in your sewing stuff so you can cart it around to class or wherever you might be going to press. So it comes in different forms. This is also one that we carry. It's a little less expensive than this guy. It's a little smaller too. So what you would do is you would apply this on top of your fabric and then apply your iron. Another thing to consider as to why you might want to use it is, say you're doing applique and you've got some kind of fusible backing on the applique, or you're making a purse. Say you're making a quilted purse and you don't want to gum up your iron. You want to avoid cleaning this plate as much as possible because it's a pain. So I would put this pressing sheet on top to avoid gumming up the iron. What's nice is the gluey bits, when it cools down, you can scrape off. All right? So this is a pressing sheet. All right, so let's talk about now how to press. There's certain tools. Say that you're at your machine, your ironing station is too many steps away. A lot of quilters use one of these seam rollers. They come in different shapes and forms. There's also what they call a finger iron that's usually made out of wood, finger presser. But then you would just simply use this as your tool. And I recommend pressing after I do this, but just to hold my seam down, and then just lying it up and firmly pressing down on it, and it creates a nice seam. Once I do that, then I press this side. Okay, so you have this as a pressing tool, and it holds pretty well. Okay. So now let's go on to things that actually would use an iron. Let's first talk about pressing versus ironing. When you're ironing, you are constantly moving this in all directions to get creases out. So you would iron probably like a collared shirt or something like that. We as quilters press, and pressing is putting something on an area for a slightly prolonged period so it holds down that area, keeps it unwrinkled, keeps it pressed. So you're just pressing down and picking up. You're not pressing and moving, because that could stretch out your seam. So you're picking up and pressing. So a good hot iron is great. Now, whether or not you use steam or not is another question. Optional. Many rules of thought. People like the steam because it helps set the seam right away. But then there's a tendency to stretch that seam. So oftentimes people want a dry, hot iron, and then they'll use a spray bottle with water to mist it and then press. So that also is an option. Steam versus dry. I think the majority of people feel that dry is better. Using some water to mist that area is the best option to hold that seam. Okay, now let's talk about the seams themselves. Again, there are many schools of thought. So the traditional way of pressing a seam is to decide first which is the light and the dark side. I think I picked a weird fabric. It's hard to determine which is light or dark. So let's pretend that the blue here is the light side and that these circles is the dark. Press light to dark because that way your dark seam is not showing through the light side of your block. So first thing I would do is I would set the seam by pressing that down here. Okay. Pick that up. Now I'll open it up. And then I'm determining which is light to dark. So now I'm going to press this seam toward the dark. So I'm going to take this now and I'm going to press. And you see how I'm not actually moving the iron as much as putting it up and down. And I'm holding it down for maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Then I'm going to turn it over, and then I like to repress again on the top. And pressing is important because there's a lot of accuracy in quilting, and this just helps it make it easier for the seams to work well together. So now I have a nice press seam. If you notice, because I will go on with the other seams, I've got some weird tools on top of my cutting board. One is this well-loved, banged up wool mat that I own. Okay? What's nice is a lot of heat can penetrate through it, and it really helps get that through all the things so that it lies nice and flat. Another tool that I could use on top of that is once I press my seam, I can use what they normally use in tailoring and stuff is a clapper, which they've designed for quilting. So you can just, once that seam is pressed, you just lay it on top and it gets all the air bubbles out and it gets nice and flat. So I would leave it there maybe for 5 seconds and pick it up and then move on to my next block. Okay, so now I've got this pressed seam. Now why did I press it to the side? Because what I want to do is lock my blocks together like puzzle pieces. So I'm going to do the same thing with my next seam. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to press it where I sewed it, open it up. I'm going to turn this around so it faces me. And I'm going to press the seam toward the light side. I also have a tool here, I'm bringing this guy up. It's like a precision stiletto. One side is a stiletto. The other side is like a third finger, like a third hand. It's got a little silicone tip, so I don't have to put my hand down here and get burnt. I can use my tip here and hold my seam down and press accordingly without worrying about my hand getting burnt and in the way. Okay, so let me go back to this side here now, and I'm going to use that as my tool. And then use my clapper for a little bit to hold it down. Now that I've got my seams pressed, you'll see that when I press them to one side or the other, or opposing sides, they're going to nest and they're going to lock in place, so that when I do finally sew this together, you're going to have this nice joining point here because the seams are locked in. All right? So that's one rule of thumb. I would always recommend, before you begin pressing, check with your pattern. A great pattern maker will provide you pressing instructions, because as you go along, you've got a lot of interlocking pieces. They go in different directions. Say you've got a sampler quilt and you've got a lot of different types of blocks. So I would always refer to the pattern maker's pressing instructions. Once you get an idea of that, say that you want to create your own pattern, then you'll have an idea of how you can best press to have a nice, crisp, clean, accurate look. Another option for pressing is pressing seams open. And why would you want to do that? A lot of traditionalists poo-poo it, but a lot of more modern quilters have begun to advocate for pressing seams open. And that allows for a nice, clean, finished look. If you've got a lot of seams that are coming together or intersecting, pressing the seams helps flatten that seam out, and then it matches and looks more professional when you're done. What I would recommend as more of a traditional quilter is to say that you are going to be pressing your seam open. I might reduce my stitch length, which is traditionally 2.5, to about a 2. That way they won't come unraveled as you open up that seam. Okay, so basically all I'm going to do is use my little stiletto again, and I'm just going to press that seam open. I had already set this seam by, I pressed my sewn line, so I'm just doing step 2 right now. Having an iron that has like a little bit of a nose, it looks like a dolphin nose, is helpful because that helps in guiding you to press that seam open. I'm going to use that clapper again to set my seam. Here it is. All right, another tool besides the wool mat, which is nice when you're creating your blocks, is having a mat that's insulated. This is made by Clover, with the silver side that's insulated. It's nicely padded, and it has pretty much an accurate one by one gridded block on here. So that way, if you want to make sure how accurate your seams are, you can just use these lines and then trim down accordingly if your block isn't matched up properly. So it's a nice mat to have. It's well loved, which is why you see some marking on it, but I really enjoy this. Particularly say that I don't want to walk to the ironing board. I can use my cutting mat as a ironing surface. But please keep in mind, you want to protect the laminate surface here. So I would put a piece of cardboard under it. It's not porous per se, but a lot of this heat gets trapped into these mats and then does impact the quality of your cutting table, all right? So a piece of cardboard would be helpful. I oftentimes like to have both mats on my cutting table if I'm going to choose to do that, so that I have my insulated mat here. then my wool mat on top, just to ensure the integrity of the table below. All right? So that's all my tips about quilting and pressing. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Have a great day.